Hello. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. We are on episode 5, which is insane. But it has been really fun. So we just want to say thank you guys, number one, for listening and giving us space, talking about some really hard things. And this week, Kristen, we are going to be talking about, let me get our little note cards I made because I am a recovering perfectionist, as you know. And this episode is about taking the mask off.
I just said to her, we're going to peel it. Peel it off.
Literally.
What's underneath the mask?
Skincare routine, baby.
Skincare.
Girl. So,
Peptides,
it's take the mask off, the pressure to perform and look perfect. Getting into how women can release the need to hold it all together and be real.
Wow.
Yeah.
I thought we were supposed to hold it all together. I'm very confused. We're women.
Turns out that makes you explode.
Combust like a firework.
And
just like into a million pieces.
That's not even like a thing for women. That's kids, women, men.
Anybody.
Anyone.
Yes.
So hopefully this can help a lot of people in general.
For sure.
But yeah, you want me to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's
go, girl.
Let's get into it. So, with me, you know a lot about my history with my family now. We even talked about more this morning while we were getting ready. And when I was thinking about why I am such a, when I'm more in my unhealthy state, I am a super big perfectionist. Not even unhealthy state when I am stressed or uncertain or have fear come in, my perfectionism gets worse. And I feel like we are very similar on this with cleaning our houses and decluttering and things like that, like to release that stress.
It's a wonderful thing.
It's the best.
One day me and Chloe had a crazy situation happen, like with somebody. And we literally both went to my house together and we both went our separate ways and cleaned my house for like 2 hours, just in our zone, music on. To me, it's such a healthy release because when you go through something, your body can feel it and you're like, you know, feel like you can't breathe. So when you're moving, cleaning things, and then you have a clean house after. Anywho, continue.
Ain't nobody else gonna do it, you know? Nobody else. So anyways, husbands, help out. Kids, help out. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with where I really had to like root down into where did this perfection really start in me? Because nothing happens by accident. Traits are formed, traits are learned, traits are caught. Yeah. And so I had to really think like, where did I catch this behavior of not even perfectionism, like everything has to look perfect, but like self-destructive, like you're not good enough. You need to do better. Shut up and work harder. If you didn't do this, it wouldn't do this. If you would just give yourself more, you know, that thing.
Your own worst critic constantly, every single day. Yeah.
That perfectionism. So when I looked back, it really came back to when my parents divorced. And so I was 9 years old when they split. And I remember as soon as they split, and I also want to preface it with this. I love my parents. I have a very broken relationship with my mom, which we'll talk about in episode 6, that I'm really, really confident that the Lord will redeem. But my dad is my hero. And I know my dad doesn't have social media, so he won't see this, but I need for him to understand if he ever hears this episode, like, it's not your fault. You did the best you could with the ex-wife you had. And I'm so thankful for my stepmom coming in to truly save me. And you know how much
She's
I
an
love
angel.
Lee. So I just had to shout my dad out because he's like my man. And so, you know, I became really stressed when my mom left my dad because she left him. She made that choice to leave him. And I do think it's the best thing they ever did because I know I wouldn't be here if I didn't have my stepmom. I would not be here. Like, Lee, we'll have an episode just about her. But it was still chaotic, though. And I was talking to Lee about this the other day, and she said she did her best to make sure that I felt safe and seen because as soon as my parents split, It wasn't a normal custody, okay?
Yeah.
There was no custody. So it was either house anytime. My mom wanted to take me somewhere, and I told you we traveled a lot. She'd take me. But then, like, she would drop me off whenever, or she wouldn't want me. Yeah. So for me, it was very scary all the time and uncertainty. It really created, like, I started getting eczema and psoriasis. I became lactose intolerant, like all these issues internally. And looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, it was my body in a state of shock. It wasn't because I was eating Cheerios and I got eczema. You know what I mean? You could eat whatever in the 90s. Yeah. There were no rules. I don't know what's in food now, but like 90s food, what, Gushers? Girl, you probably didn't eat Gushers.
I did. Okay. I love Gushers. Fruit by the foot.
They don't taste the freaking same.
No,
I don't know.
Don't.
Just bring them back, y'all. Bring them back.
Gushers.
So I started at around 10 developing obsessive compulsive disorder. And things that I would do, if there's anybody on here who has suffered with this or you do suffer, I would check the doorknob in my room 3 times or I couldn't go out of my room. Like I would trap myself in there until I did it. I would open and close doors multiple times before I went to bed. I would have to have things a perfect way or everything was going to go to shit. And so I was doing that. It breaks my heart.
It's because you had control. That's what you had control of.
Yes. And everything was chaotic. And so I also developed eating issues. So I would actually not eat or binge eat, which now that I'm healthy, I learned from my doctor that eating like that your whole life, not eating and then binge eating. And binge eating, I wouldn't eat a ton, but I would eat like, 2,000 to 3,000 calories, which is kind of a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And so it made my leptin levels go up over the past 30 years. And so, then around 11 years old, I started getting a lot of anger and resentment. And you heard my mom this morning when we called her. She was engaged to so many men, she forgot who she was engaged to.
Yeah.
And so I was around a lot of relationships, seeing from men that were bad men. They were not good to her. Some of them were. Majority, no. The ones that she really loved, that's the thing, they were bad to her. And I think that's because that's all my mom knew.
Yeah, that's what she thought love was.
Yeah, yeah. And so I just remember getting so angry. I would get so angry at these men, and I would get so angry at her. And I would go back and back home to my dad's house, and my stepmom would have to talk me down or be there for me. And I mean, I remember my dad like driving over to these houses and like about to fight these men.
Yeah.
Because they were so dangerous. And my dad was like, why are you putting our kids in this situation? But he didn't want to take her out of our lives because he knew what it was like growing up in foster care.
Yeah.
He knew what it was like to not have one parent because he only had my Mima until she couldn't afford all the kids and he had to move out into a foster home.
He thought he was doing good by you by letting you guys still have a relationship with her because he didn't have that.
Yeah. And so then, when I was around the age 11, 12, I was the kid. I feel like me and you have talked about this. Like you were the same. I started becoming an overperformer. I started becoming just big on let me be great so I'm not a problem because my mom is such a problem. And my sister also, she was just hyperactive. So she was just, getting kicked out of gymnastics, doing stuff like that. And, I started developing, I'm just going to take care of me.
Yeah.
I got this.
Hyper independence.
I got this. And so I'll never forget, though, my stepmom helping me with my first project. And I'd never had a parent. And it's not that my dad didn't want to. My dad was just working all the time. Like he would take us after daycare at 5 p.m. back to work where he had been since 6 a.m. And I would watch him work until 8 p.m. and we would go home. And so my dad did nothing wrong. He just didn't have a partner until he got my stepmom to help. And he had a delusional, dysfunctional ex-wife that chose her own destruction over her kids. And so, my stepmom, I'll never forget her helping me with a project. And that's the first time I feel like I saw what true love was because I was like, she wants to help me with a project. And then it was so consistent. And so that was really helpful for me during that time because it was just rough. And then my note card. And then around the age of 14, that is when I really amped up perfectionism. So this is the part where I really want the viewers to understand that high school is such a pivotal moment for you, for your kids. We've got to pay attention to what's going on with our kids when they're in high school, because it's not that my stepmom wasn't. Lee knew everything that was going on and she was there for me, but it's different with your bio parents. You need that.
Yeah.
Because you're literally genetically, you're tied to their
Yes.
souls. And so after I got my 2 abortions, I literally had to just be perfect. You know, I was already embarrassed and super, super shameful of my dad, because I didn't want him to know.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to like disappoint him. So I just started excelling at everything I did. Most popular boy in school, that's my boyfriend. You know, captain the cheerleading team, SGA, the coolest friends who still to this day are awesome. Like I had but everything had to be better.
Yeah.
And better and better and better and better and better, because I thought that if I just covered up and nobody knew what was going on at home. And at this point, I'm telling you, my mom has been engaged from the time of 10 to 14. My mom was engaged 6 times. So this isn't like, oh, you know, she was putting me through it.
Yes, she was.
And my sister.
Yes, she was. You had no control.
Yeah. So
None.
I started this like toxic relationship with myself of being the perfect daughter. And that started at 14. And then, like I told you this morning, when I went to college, I was so excited because I was still 17 when I went to college, because I'm an August birthday and they started me a year early. And I was like, I can't wait to get the hell out of this town. Because at this point, I had been, we're going to talk about next episode. I mean, my mom was putting me through it.
Yeah.
Jail, this, that. And so as soon as I got to college a year and a half later, I found out my mom's pregnant. And I was like, you're kidding me, Mom. Like, and at this point, she's a full-blown alcoholic before she gets pregnant. I'm like, Mom, like, you may die from DTs, like going, like withdrawing. What are we doing? And
you're just trying to be a freshman in college.
Yeah. And so I started driving home every weekend. And this was also when.
And you're also a fixer.
I'm a fixer. I had to be.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't an adult.
Yeah.
It was not an adult growing up.
You always had to be.
And I cannot wait to talk about that in the next episode. But, you know, I just became perfect. None of my friends really knew what was going on with my sister Jenny. Nobody knew what hell I was going through after my mom had her and CPS taking her, and her dad literally like putting me on blast in court, talking about my abortions, which is a massive HIPAA violation to begin with, how they even got that information. And I was 19 years old. And so just imagine like the shame in hearing, you know, and I was in a sorority at ECU. I was in Tri Sigma. You know, I had to make sure that all this stayed in line.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't have people know that I was, my family was a damn disaster, honestly.
Yeah.
And
had to maintain that perfect image.
I had to because I didn't have any coping, any therapy or any, you know, even my stepmom, like Lee was the one always there for me, but I didn't want to put her through it.
Of course.
Because at this time too.
She was going through it.
With my sister. My sister was dating a heroin addict who killed himself on accident, overdosed, I mean. And so they're dealing with my sister and my sister developing a mental health disorder, which we'll talk about in another episode. But
you really had to be
things kept
perfect.
coming up where I was like, okay, Mom, got to make sure she's good. Sister, okay, they got her. And it's like, where's Chloe?
So unfair.
And not to mention, I was in this back and forth relationship. Like, thank God my husband got saved and changed his life, but it was destructive the entire time. There was never a point in that relationship in high school with Justin where I felt truly loved. And I think that's why I had to go through so much therapy to like know what God's love was.
Of course.
And so, so then, you know, Mom gets pregnant and, you know, baby gets taken by CPS and to the Father, just to be with the Father. And we could only see her like an hour a week and sometimes 2 hours a week. So I would drive. And I was in nursing school too, or trying to get into nursing school.
That's exhausting.
It's not the being in nursing school, that it was super hard, but
Yes.
trying to get in.
Oh, yes.
In this college at
Yes.
ECU, it's like they want you to not succeed almost.
Yeah, it's scary.
In the medical field. So I was like
so hard.
on so much Adderall.
So anxious.
It's wild, man.
I bet.
And then, you know, what I want to end it with before you go is like, I realized to get rid of this perfectionism, because that's the thing. Perfectionism, when it is, I think it's a disorder. I mean, you see the way I am sometimes. And I even had to tell you the other day, like, look, like, I know that I am really like taking over in these certain areas, but I can't help it because I know that I can just do it the best, you know, because I'm Chloe. I can do it the best. So just sit there and I'll get you a water and I'm going to figure it all out. And that's just not the way God created us to be, you know, but honestly, God created us to be collaborative species.
Yes,
and
yes,
I didn't know that
ma'am.
because I didn't have that.
Yeah.
You know, I was
course.
the standalone warrior standing in between my mom with men, telling them I'll kill them. Like, that's at 11 years old. I was saying those things. My son's age, you know? And so I realized that the perfectionism was broken through the hell I was in because of Jesus. There's nothing else. There's not a tool. There's like, yes, therapy. I will say therapy, you know, y'all know me and Kristen are big therapy advocates. Yeah. It's what it is.
You got to do it.
I don't know how. Stop reading Mel Robbins books. Stop reading.
You got to sit down in front of somebody too. It's such a difference than like doing it over the phone. They were like, "Oh, you could do a Zoom call," and I'm like, I just feel like I need to be here, in the seat.
Community, because when two or more are gathered, the Lord is here. I'm just saying that's in the Bible.
It is in the Bible.
I don't know what else y'all want.
It is in the Bible.
And so like I realized that the divorce, my mom's downfall, both abortions, my sister being sick, I used to take a lot of responsibility for that because when she got sick, it was when I was in college.
And you weren't there. That wasn't your fault, baby.
And then my little sister being taken from me, I realized that none of those things were my fault.
Yeah.
And that God used me even in those moments to save my mom. There were many times when I literally saved her, brought her back to life. And so that didn't start though until I was 32. And I'm 34 now. You know what I mean? So
I understand.
It took that long. And you go. I've been talking way too much.
Go bye.
And share.
I love when you talk.
Share your type B perfectionism.
Oh my
self.
gosh. I'm. What did you say? You are kind of like type A.
You're like AB.
I am
like AB blood.
AB blood.
Yeah.
I wonder. No. Okay.
Or BA. You're like BA. Like
I am.
When you're healthy,
For sure.
I feel like
I'm
that's
very
a good
BA.
thing. And you are BA. You're badass. We're so lame. People are gonna watch us and be like,
what are these girls even doing? We're just talking.
We don't know the lingo.
We don't know what we're supposed to be doing. God told us to do it and we're here.
We're here.
And that's what we're gonna keep
God
doing.
and Chat GPT help
That's
us
what
out,
we're gonna
man.
be doing. So Chloe just said, you know, you didn't start till you were 32. I'm 42. I would have to say I probably started at, Lord have mercy, probably not for the last couple of years, if I'm being honest, you know, last 2-3 years, and maybe 2 years, 2.5.
Yeah, walk us through like some moments that really.
So I just feel like I never saw another choice but to hold it all together. I was never in an environment with people or women or anything like moms, that kind of thing, that were vulnerable enough to be like, this is not like none of this is okay. Like I'm not okay at this moment. So growing up, you know, my mom never sat down. We never took vacations. You know, I've already talked a little bit about my mom being home until I was a certain age. And then after that, she worked a lot. But even, I mean, growing up, we didn't like go on vacations. We were very poor. But then even after that, even up until this day, you know, Mom, I love you. But she doesn't sit down. She doesn't take care of herself. To me, taking the mask off, the first thing you have to do is be like, where am I right now? Like, where am I in my head, my heart, my body, my life? Like, in order to take the mask off, you have to truly self-reflect enough to be like, where am I? Like, and how did I even get here? So for me, I have always for sure had to be the best, perfectionism, all of that. The way that I looked, the men that I dated, they had to look or be a certain way. I grew up in a very, it was like a Southern Baptist church in Boston, which was really weird.
That sounds scary.
And then
I'm scared. Wait, I have a question. Was it in like an old cathedral's church?
No, not cathedral. No, it was like a normal
Were you
building.
in pews?
Yes, we were in pews.
Okay.
I was excommunicated from this church when I was 24.
Yeah.
Because I'll talk about this another day, but I was engaged. Yes, I was engaged at one point. Very quickly after that, I was 23, 22. Had not, had a lot of fun for a long time because I was in Bible college for 3.5 years.
It's just so funny.
And then, clearly unhealed, get out of Bible college, whatever, not engaged anymore, got pregnant. Where was I going with this? Where did I even begin?
Perfectionism, and then you're going to talk about men you were talking about men you were dating.
Yes. Okay. So Bible college and being from that church, I always felt like I had to date a guy who was a church guy, pastor's kid, somebody who looked the part, all that kind of stuff.
Why did you feel
and
that way?
Because of the church that I was raised in. It was almost like you could be friends with people kind of who did not have the same faith, but also like you better not be too friendly with them. It was very strange.
Not the love of God.
No, not the love of God. Because my Jesus would have never kicked me out of a church when I was 23 years old, single and pregnant with no baby daddy.
No. Well, Jesus
I would have loved them.
Yeah,
I would have loved me.
Jesus took murderers and made them disciples, and so respectively, that's the whole problem with the church. We're not even going to get into that.
Yeah, so it was almost like no matter what I did, especially after I was raped when I was 15, no matter what I did, it was like I always screwed up, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like the only thing that I was truly super, super good at was soccer. And I was almost the best at soccer just because that's how God made me. But I still felt like I had to and then when I didn't go pro, when I was 18 and wound up at this Bible college, I definitely felt lost. Still tried to be perfect, but felt lost. And truly up until a couple years ago, raising my kids on my own, I did not give myself time to take care of myself one bit. I literally, after my divorce, was clearly a mess, drinking, partying, doing crazy stuff for a while. And then the other half of me was just making sure they were okay. There were like these two places. And so I had to find a way to not just take care of them and make sure they were okay, because they are always my number one priority. But also if I don't take this mask off and figure out who I was before all this trauma even started, and how to love myself enough because Jesus clearly loves me exactly how he made me, then I'm not going to be okay. So I think taking the mask off is truly where am I? How did I get here? Why am I like this? And I don't want to be this way anymore. Yeah. You literally have to come to a place and you're just I don't, this is ridiculous. I've watched my mom do it her entire life. And I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do this. I have to deal with myself, body, mind, and soul.
Yes.
And so that's just kind of what I did, I guess, but I understand why people women are we're so busy, and I feel like we make ourselves busier than we have to be, for sure. But women do wear so many hats, and especially single moms, because if I don't get up and do it, I don't have someone else who's going to get up and do it for me. And I haven't in 6.5 years.
Yeah, I can't even imagine that.
It's just but there is, and I've clearly figured it out, there's such a happy medium of doing both, taking care of yourself and your children. You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, with your boys too, like they love you so much and they see where you need help. And
Yeah.
especially with your oldest now that he's grown into a man, literally, he is who he is because of you. And
Yeah.
I've told you that so many times. Like your kids, my kids, they're so much better than us. Mine, not yet. They're ratchet. They're still babies.
They're
though,
babies. They're
you know,
babies.
that's what you have to look at is look at how safe your kids feel, look at how loved they feel, and also knowing in that gap where you were, you know, going through it, really not even gap, like your whole life, right? Like we have our whole lives, we've gone through stuff. God has grace. That's what grace is from God. So,
and I definitely had to learn to give myself so much grace.
Yeah.
And I think by learning who God is and who Jesus was when he walked, you start to realize like the attributes and ways that you are like Christ. And then you realize like that Jesus does love us, you know? It's just when you're going through all that, you like that's the last thing on your mind. It's just, but it should be the first thing on your mind.
And it's, you know, that was one thing I had to learn in therapy where my therapist literally was just like, you do not love yourself.
Yeah.
And I think it's when you're a product of abandonment, shame, different issues that get different bondages that get put on you at these ages going through your life, like you start to think you are gross, that you
dirty,
must be perfect.
Yeah.
You know, like, and that's your job and that's what you've got to do. And once I learned, like I said, at 32 to have God love me, you're so right. I was able to let him in and then doors opened once I learned like, no, he did love me. He loved me through those abortions. He loved me through, you know, the emotional abuse with my mom.
There.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you want to say anything to wrap this episode up, but perfectionism.
Well, and I truly feel like most women deal with this.
Oh, no doubt.
I would say 75% of women at least deal with this.
And social media has made it, unfortunately, social media it can be really detrimental or it can be really helpful. And I think that, my arm going in like this, I think that that has amped it up even more so with kids today. I feel like kids either go the way your kids are, which is like they're not worried about being perfect. They're, you know, they just have different values. And then there's other kids who are, I mean, honestly, there's kids out here doing horrible things to themselves because they feel bullied online. And I am so glad only MySpace was here when I was growing up and you just alternated your 8 friends, okay? I used to change
the background of my MySpace to like different colors. Do you remember
we were coding.
Your MySpace?
Did you realize we were coding? No. We were putting codes in to make the backgrounds and stuff.
No, we were not.
Yes, we were, girl. We were out here coding on MySpace.
I used to love MySpace.
You know, we're smarter than we think. But yeah, and then you'd get pissed at a friend, you like move them down.
Yes,
like you're number 3.
Yes.
You're off.
I forgot about your favorite friends. That was so
then
fun.
you would have like Get Low, like these crazy songs. I don't even think our parents knew we had accounts. I don't think our parents could get in because there was no apps. It was wonderful.
No, I would just go in my dining room and go doot, 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 wait for that thing to load. Doot, 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 doot. I'd be like, wait,
and then it was like,
phone.
I can't there we go.
I bet that was very attractive. That will get me a husband. Okay.
Let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up. We just thank you for hanging out today with us on episode 4.
5.
What episode are we on? It's just going by so quick. We're having such a good time.
I love it.
And again, like we always say, thank you guys for trusting us and letting us have, honestly, a safe place to be vulnerable and to hopefully, you know, find some beautiful blessings out of all of this.
Like inspire each of you guys to
take the mask off.
Yeah, go out and be you, be authentic. And we didn't say that, but the closer you get to
your authentic
being
self,
healed, doing all these things, you unwrap your authentic self, and we cannot operate where God or whatever you guys believe in, we can't operate where we need to be until we're authentic.
No.
And
that's the other thing I had that I had written down. One of the best things that helped me too was really trying to remember, who was I before all these things happened to me? What did I enjoy? What did I love? Fashion, soccer,
drawing,
like working out. I love fitness. I love to draw. There's so many things that I loved before, that terrible night when I was 15. And I think really remembering who you were before all of that brings you back to your authentic self.
So good. Yay. We love you guys. Right. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Gosh.
That was a